this?
Whenever I can, Hank. A lot of times I'm on the road, in which case I use the chairs that are in the hotel room or whatever I can. The whole idea is I feel better when I work out.
Clint Walker seemed like the perfect cowboy, tall, broad-shouldered, and with an imposing presence, the very image of a Western hero. But off-screen, he was not the gunslinger Hollywood imagined. He was a quiet and reserved man, more at ease at home with his family than under the bright lights of fame. During the golden age of television, he became a household name as Cheyenne Bodie, the brave drifter who brought law and order to the frontier. Yet while millions watched him ride across the screen, few knew the story of the daughter he cherished so deeply. Clint Walker had a daughter, Valerie, who grew up in the shadow of his fame, but chose a completely different path, not in Hollywood, but in the skies. Today we ask, what happened to Clint Walker's daughter? Clint Walker was born Norman Eugene Walker on May 30th, 1927, in Hartford, Illinois. He came from humble beginnings, the son of a factory worker and part of a large family that struggled to get by during the Great Depression. The hard times shaped him early, giving him a toughness and work ethic that he carried for the rest of his life. Looking back, he once said, "I grew up during the Depression, so you didn't expect life to hand you anything. You learned to work for it." As a teenager, Clint left school before graduating to help support his family. He took whatever work he could find. He labored in factories, shoveled coal, worked as a deckhand on riverboats, and even joined traveling carnivals, where he learned how to manage tough, physical jobs without complaint. Later, he would recall, "I did a little of everything before I ever thought about acting. I just wanted to make a living, and you did what you had to do." When he was old enough, Clint joined the Merchant Marine near the end of World War II. He sailed on ships carrying supplies across dangerous waters, an experience that gave him both discipline and perspective. It was the kind of work that toughened young men, but it also taught him responsibility. "I learned early," he said, "that if you wanted to get somewhere, you had to keep moving forward." Standing 6'6" and weighing well over 200 pounds, Clint's physical presence was impossible to ignore. Even as a young man, strangers commented on his size and his striking features. People often suggested he could be in pictures, but Clint shrugged off the idea. He wasn't chasing fame. At the time, acting was the farthest thing from his mind. "I never thought of myself as an actor," he once admitted. "I was just a fellow trying to find his way." He drifted from job to job, moving wherever opportunity could be found. Those years of odd work gave him not only financial survival, but also a quiet confidence. He carried himself with the calm steadiness of someone who had seen hard times and endured them. Hollywood, though, was just around the corner, waiting to turn an ordinary working man into one of the most recognizable cowboys of television's golden age. T. Walker looked every bit the rugged cowboy, tall, broad-shouldered, and stoic, the very image of a Western hero. But off-screen, he was not the gunslinger Hollywood imagined. He was a quiet, private man, more comfortable at home with his family than under the bright lights of fame. And if you are into classic Hollywood icons, amazing stories, and newly discovered insights, then hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers, and your support will mean a lot to our channel. Clint Walker's path to Hollywood seemed almost accidental. After years of working in jobs that demanded muscle more than polish, he eventually made his way to California in the early 1950s. His sheer size, 6'6" tall with broad shoulders and striking features, made him impossible to miss. People constantly suggested he could be in movies. At first, Clint brushed it off. "I didn't see myself as an actor," he later admitted. "I was just a working man trying to get by." But fate had other plans. He was introduced to Henry Wilson, a well-known Hollywood agent, famous for shaping the careers of Rock Hudson and Tab Hunter. Wilson recognized something unique in Clint, not just his imposing stature, but the calmness and sincerity in his voice. He signed Clint immediately and encouraged him to take a more memorable name. Clint agreed, shortening Norman Eugene Walker into the simple, strong name audiences would remember, Clint Walker. In 1955, Warner Brothers was preparing to launch a new television experiment, the first hour-long Western series. They needed a leading man who could embody the ruggedness of the frontier, but also the nobility of a hero. When Clint walked in, he was exactly what they were looking for. He was cast as Cheyenne Bodie in Cheyenne. Almost overnight, Clint was transformed from an unknown into a household name. Cheyenne was a hit, running from 1955 to 1963, and drawing millions of viewers each week. Children and adults alike were captivated by the tall drifter who roamed the frontier, dispensing justice with fairness and courage. Clint brought something new to the Western hero: quiet strength. "I wanted Cheyenne to be more than just a man with a gun," he explained years later. "I wanted him to have dignity, decency, and respect for others. That mattered to me." The role also demanded physical toughness. Clint often performed his own stunts, riding horses at full gallop, leaping onto moving wagons, and taking punches that looked real, because more often than not, they were. "They didn't have all the safety standards back then," he recalled with a chuckle. "If you wanted it to look good, you did it yourself. I got bruised up plenty, but I figured that's what the audience deserved." The success of Cheyenne opened doors to the big screen. Clint appeared in Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments in 1956, sharing the screen with Charlton Heston and Yul Brynner, and later starred in films like Fort Dobbs in 1958, Yellowstone Kelly in 1959, and the war epic The Dirty Dozen in 1967. Yet despite the fame, Clint never let success go to his head. He often downplayed his star power, saying, "I was never much for the Hollywood life. I didn't drink much, I didn't party. I just wanted to do my work and go home to my family." That modesty became part of his charm. He was the cowboy who seemed just as real off the screen as he did on it. Behind the image of the fearless cowboy, Clint Walker valued something much more personal: family. Long before the cameras and the fame, he fell in love with a young woman named Verna Garver. The two married in 1948, when Clint was still taking on odd jobs to make ends meet. 2 years later, in 1950, they welcomed their only child, a daughter they named Valerie. Fatherhood gave Clint a new sense of purpose. Even as his career began to take off, he made it clear that family came first. While filming Cheyenne, his schedule was punishing. Episodes were long, stunts were demanding, and the show quickly became one of the biggest hits on television. Yet Clint never let his success overshadow his role as a father. Friends remembered him leaving the studio after 16-hour days, still wearing his cowboy boots, just so he could read Valerie a bedtime story. "I wasn't chasing stardom," he later explained. "What I cared about was being home with my little girl." Valerie grew up in the very center of Hollywood's golden age of westerns, but her father kept her well protected from the glare of fame. Clint rarely allowed her in front of cameras and discouraged the press from covering his family life. He wanted her to grow up with stability rather than the chaos of celebrity. "Hollywood was never a place I wanted for my child," Clint said firmly. "She deserved to be raised in the real world, not in a circus." Despite his rising fame, Clint remained a modest man. Angela Lansbury, who worked in the same era, once remarked that Clint was one of the most grounded men in the business. That grounded nature shaped his parenting. He taught Valerie discipline, kindness, and self-respect. The same qualities he believed made Cheyenne Bodie a hero on screen. In 1968, Clint and Verna divorced after 20 years of marriage. Though the marriage ended, Clint's devotion to Valerie never wavered. He stayed close to her throughout her childhood and supported her as she pursued her own dreams. In later years, Clint married twice more, first to Giselle Hennessy, with whom he shared nearly 2 decades until her passing in 1994, and later to Susan Cavallari, with whom he spent the final chapter of his life. Yet through all the changes, his role as a father remained his most important. Clint often spoke with pride about Valerie. "She's stronger than I ever was," he said in one interview. "She made her own way, and I admire her for it." Unlike many children of Hollywood stars, Valerie didn't follow her father into the entertainment industry. Instead, she chose an entirely different path, one that took her not onto film sets, but into the sky. Valerie Walker was born in 1950, just as her father Clint was building the foundation of his acting career. While millions of Americans would come to know Clint Walker as the towering cowboy Cheyenne Bodie, at home he was simply Dad, and he wanted his daughter to live as normal a childhood as possible. He often said, "Hollywood can eat people alive." I didn't want that for Valerie. I wanted her to grow up strong, independent, and grounded. From her earliest years, Valerie displayed a spirit of determination and curiosity. She shared her father's love of the outdoors, spending weekends horseback riding, hiking, and exploring nature. She also had a fascination with adventure and machines, particularly airplanes. Friends remembered her sketching aircraft in her notebooks and staring up at the sky every time a plane passed overhead. "Flying caught my imagination when I was a kid," she later said. "I wanted to be up there, in control of something powerful, with nothing but the sky around me." At a time when women were rarely seen in cockpits, Valerie pursued her dream with single-minded dedication. She earned her pilot's license and began training on increasingly complex aircraft. The aviation world of the 1970s was still a male-dominated environment, and Valerie faced skepticism and outright discrimination. But she persevered. "In those days," she explained, "you had to be twice as good just to be considered half as capable. I didn't waste energy being angry about it, I just worked harder." Her hard work paid off. Valerie Walker became one of the very first female airline pilots in the United States. She flew for Western Airlines and later for Delta, where she was admired for her skill, steady nerves, and professionalism in the cockpit. Fellow pilots often commented on her ability to stay calm under pressure, a quality she attributed to both her training and her upbringing. "My father taught me to keep my head when things got tough," she once said. "That lesson has stayed with me in every part of my life." Valerie's pioneering role in aviation earned her recognition among her peers. While she was not one to chase the spotlight, she became a quiet symbol for other women entering the field, proving that the sky was not reserved for men alone. She often downplayed her achievements, preferring instead to focus on doing her job well and helping others learn. "The best award I ever got," she said, "was seeing a young woman I trained take command of her first flight." Outside of aviation, Valerie developed a passion for martial arts. She studied various disciplines and eventually became an instructor, teaching self-defense to both adults and children. For her, martial arts were not just about physical strength, but also about mental discipline and self-respect. "Courage isn't about never being afraid," she said. "It's about facing fear and moving forward anyway." Valerie also enjoyed painting and gardening in her spare time, pursuits that gave her a sense of peace after the high adrenaline life of aviation. She was known among friends for her humor, her independence, and her refusal to conform to expectations. Clint Walker was immensely proud of his daughter. He often told interviewers, "Valerie's tougher than I ever was. She went out and carved a life of her own on her own terms." That's the kind of strength I admire for Clint. Watching Valerie succeed outside of Hollywood was proof that protecting her from fame had been the right decision. Today, Valerie lives a quieter life, retired from commercial aviation, but still remembered as a pioneer. Her journey is a story of resilience, courage, and breaking barriers, a legacy that mirrors her father's own quiet strength. While Clint Walker will always be remembered as one of television's greatest cowboys, Valerie Walker's name endures in the history of American aviation, a testament to independence and determination. As the years passed, Clint Walker stepped away from Hollywood's spotlight and embraced a quieter rhythm of life. After decades of riding across television screens as Cheyenne Bodie and appearing in classic films, he retired to Grass Valley, California, with his third wife, Susan Cavallari. There, the towering cowboy who had once symbolized rugged independence found peace in the simple pleasures of home. He enjoyed long walks outdoors, the companionship of close friends, and the steady presence of family. Clint never forgot the hardships that shaped him. In 1971, he had faced death head-on when a skiing accident left him with a pierced heart. For several minutes, doctors believed he was gone. Against all odds, he recovered. Reflecting on that day, he would say with his dry humor, "They told me I was dead, but I guess the Lord had other plans." That brush with mortality made him even more grateful for the years that followed. Even in retirement, Clint maintained a bond with his fans. He regularly attended Western film conventions and autograph shows, greeting admirers with warmth and humility. Unlike many stars of his era, he never let fame harden him. "I never thought of myself as anything special," he once told a reporter. "I just tried to play my roles with honesty. If Cheyenne gave kids someone to look up to, then I did what I was meant to do." Fans often said meeting him felt like meeting Cheyenne Bodie himself, a man of quiet strength and genuine kindness. On May 21, 2018, Clint Walker passed away peacefully at the age of 90. His death marked the end of an era. Obituaries hailed him as one of the last great television cowboys, a reminder of the golden age of Westerns when decency, courage, and dignity defined a hero. Actors and fans alike paid tribute. One admirer wrote, "He was larger than life, but somehow also just like us. That was his gift." For his daughter Valerie, the loss was deeply personal. She remembered not just the cowboy on screen, but the father who taught her discipline and calm under pressure. "My dad was a man of enormous strength, but also enormous tenderness," she reflected. "He showed me that real courage isn't loud. It's steady, it's patient, it's knowing who you are." Those lessons had guided her through her groundbreaking career in aviation, from fighting for respect in a male-dominated field to staying composed in high-pressure flights. Clint often said before his passing, "Valerie is tougher than I ever was. She carved her own life, and I admire her for it." That pride was mutual. Valerie saw in her father not just a Hollywood icon, but a model of resilience and integrity. Today, Clint Walker's legacy lives on in more than the reruns of Cheyenne or his roles in The Dirty Dozen and Fort Dobbs. It lives in the example he set as a man who valued family over fame and in the courage of a daughter who carried his lessons into the skies. Together, their stories remind us that true legacy is not about the roles we play for the world, but the values we pass on to those we love. Clint Walker's story is one of grit, humility, and quiet strength. On screen, he was the towering cowboy who defined an era of television westerns. Off-screen, he was a man who valued family, integrity, and the simple things in life. His daughter, Valerie, carried that same strength into her own journey, breaking barriers as one of the first female airline pilots in America, proving that courage can take many forms. Together, father and daughter built a legacy that went beyond Hollywood or aviation. It was a legacy of resilience, determination, and dignity. Clint once said, "I never thought of myself as a star. I just wanted to be someone people could respect." In many ways, Valerie fulfilled that wish, not by standing in the shadow of his fame, but by carving out her own place in history. Their stories remind us that true legacy is not just what we achieve in the public eye, but the values we live by and pass on. Clint Walker will forever be remembered as Cheyenne Bodie, the cowboy hero of the frontier. But for Valerie, And for those inspired by both of their lives, his greatest role was simply being a father. If you enjoyed this look into the life and legacy of Clint Walker and his daughter Valerie, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss more stories about the families behind Hollywood's greatest legends. And tell us in the comments, what's your favorite memory of Clint Walker?